I have a very special episode for all of you. And if you have not followed my channel before, I don't really bring on guests. In fact, Whitney's here with us, and you can see, as authentic as this is, Whitney's in her kitchen. I'm in my office, my home office here. We're going to have a really special conversation. Whitney is someone who specializes as a certified grief coach. She is a widow herself. And so this video might not be applicable to a lot of you, but you might know someone who is a widow or someone who you're like, hey, I just feel like this would be a helpful video for them because of what they're going through. So I'm going to get to ask Whitney some questions today, and it's going to be hopefully really informative. But I am all about making sure I don't waste any of your time. So some of you are going to be like, hey, this doesn't seem like a Roth conversion video and a deep financial analysis. And if that's what you're looking for, you will not like us today because that is not what today is all about. The last guest I actually brought on was over a year ago, actually about 11 months now. And this was a health insurance expert because I have a lot of people that reach out that go, I'm not going to retire early because of health insurance. And that is just, you're cheating yourself. It's something you have to plan for. It can be a significant cost, but we need to make sure we're planning. So don't just kind of take the easy way out and go, I'm not going to retire early because of healthcare. At the same side, don't just go, well, I don't know how I'm going to live now because I don't have my spouse anymore. So what we want to do is explore, okay, what does it mean to truly have a financial plan? It's not just about what the numbers say and the graphs. And oftentimes you'll go to an advisor and they'll show you all these graphs and you'll be like, okay, I see you're excited about this, but this isn't really giving me peace of mind. I don't really have more confidence. So with that being said, Whitney, thank you so much for coming on here. I'm going to stop blabbering so that we get to hear from you as the special guest. So my first question is just in terms of your background for everyone to get a sense, what does it mean to be a certified grief coach? I think people probably have a sense as to kind of why you're doing this, but for those who don't know you at all, a brief overview would be super helpful.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Ari, for having me. Hopefully I will give some good information today to people that are listening. So my name is Whitney Lynn Allen Gadecki, and I am a widow. I became a certified grief educator after my husband Ryan died in 2022. So the process of that I went through a certification program through grief expert David Kessler. So it was about 6 months where I learned how to support people through the grief process. And this is my third year doing that full time.
Okay. Wow. So, first of all, thank you for sharing. Second, what are some of the biggest misconceptions that people think about when it comes to literally being a widow? And that can be anything from identity to, hey, I financially know I should gonna get stuff taken care of, but I don't know emotionally how I can do that. Like, what are some misconceptions?
Yeah, I think one of the big ones that I encounter a lot with my own clients is, especially when you're a woman, I feel like when you lose your spouse, it's like then you kind of lose your sense of I can't really do these big decisions by myself, right? Because I don't have that counterpart to be like, it's okay, like whether it's a financial thing or if it's with kids or if it's with like a house project. I find that a lot of my clients have a lot of trouble being confident in making those really big decisions, financial or otherwise. And one of the things that I always try to say to those clients is obviously you're not going to have all the answers, right? Like I think that having a team of people reaching out to people that you trust, like whether or not that's like in the finances, or friends and family that, might have done parenthood before and they have older kids, you need a team of people to support you because I don't think anyone should have to do all of the things by themselves.
Yeah. And I cannot imagine emotionally what it's like. And so I don't know if there is a story or something that comes to mind, but I am truly just curious. How do
Yeah.
you literally approach the unique emotional complexity of being a widow?
Yeah, it's really difficult for me. I think I follow the advice that I give to my clients. Obviously, when you're going through grief, there's the emotional aspect, and then you're having to make all of these. I mean, if you're like my husband was in the hospital between the time he was in an accident and then passing away. So not only was, and I was pregnant at the time when I had a toddler.
Wow.
Not only was I having to deal with all of that stuff in the background and having to be my husband's caretaker, I was also his guardian because he was in a vegetative state. So I had to become his emergency guardian, to be able to make like all of the financial decisions because I couldn't call just credit card companies and speak for him unless I was his guardian. And a
Mm,
lot of people don't understand that.
mhm,
So obviously, like with the emotional aspect, I had to make so many decisions, like financial and otherwise. And also, he was a police officer. So I had to figure out, okay, like with our finances, like what's coming in, what bills have to be paid.
mhm,
I didn't do the bills. Like I didn't pay any of the bills. So while I'm 26 weeks pregnant, my husband's in the ICU, I am balancing my laptop on my legs
oh my
and
God.
trying to figure out what bills need to get paid. I'm like going into his phone trying to see if he has any like, all of his passwords and apps, like how things get paid, how much, when. I had to figure that out all by myself because that was something that he just did and it was really nice. But I also wish I had asked like, okay, well, if something happens to you, how do I do this? Like, how do
Mhm,
I pay all the bills? What are the bills? How much are they? When are they due? And am I a secondary person
mhm.
to call and for them to the companies to be able to like take my money?
Yeah.
Because I ran into a lot of issues where I was calling companies and being like, my husband's in a coma. How do I pay this bill? And they're like, we can't give you that information because you're not listed on this account. So so it was like a
Mm,
cluster. It was
mhm,
horrible and I learned the hard way, which I hope if you're listening to this, you have the tough conversations with your spouse to be like, okay, if you're not the one that pays the bills, like, can you put this in a place where if something happens to you, or like even if you're like delayed or something, you can't communicate with them on a flight
mhm,
and like something needs to get paid that you are on all the accounts, like you're at least a secondary so people can talk to you, you can make those decisions, and that like how things work. So if something happens, you can still, have the lights on and you're not going to lose your house and like all of those things.
mhm.
Um, Now I'm even forgetting like where we kind of started, but there's so much that goes into, I mean, just the emotional part of grief, but then also all of the practical stuff that you have to deal with along with, the emotional mental part that you're going through as well. So it's very complicated.
Yes, and I am imagining if I was the customer service agent at that company, I would be so bad. I'd be like, I'm helping you out. But I know there are rules, and there's a phrase we'll talk about here called ROH, not ROI, which is return on investment, but ROH, return on hassle. And yeah,
Mhm.
it's a hassle to get the beneficiaries updated and talk to your spouse about it, but it's like that return is huge. And so there's three people I imagine right now are watching slash listening to this. Number one is I have advisors that work here at Root that are wondering, how do I communicate? And I'll have a direct question for you, Whitney, I promise. But they're
Yeah.
wondering, how do I communicate with someone who is a recent widow? Because I would imagine I would go like, so are you like doing okay? Or like, that's not effective. So that's number one in my head. Number two is there's probably a widow watching right now going, hey, I just don't even know how to start and I just need some direction. So I'm thinking, kind of, okay, what would you tell someone who's a recent widow and now they're going, okay, I need to handle all of this and I don't know where to start? Do I start by financially diving in and kind of letting my emotions be over here and tackle them later? Do I do it at the same time? What do I do? And then number three is I'm thinking even of my dad is in good health today, but my mom is in her early 70s. And so she would sleep better at night knowing that everything was, every I was dotted and T was crossed. And so I'm trying to think, for total peace of mind, which is what people are really after. I
Yeah.
couldn't just say, hey, Whitney, what's everything everyone should do? Because it's obviously not that simple. But if we start
Yeah.
with okay, I'm a recent widow, where do I even begin? How would you approach that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think it's first and foremost, taking stock of, what is your situation, right? Because there are some widows that, like myself, fortunately, I had life insurance, like my husband
Mhm.
had a policy.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to rush back to work. I mean, so much so that I was a lawyer before my husband's accident, and I left practicing law to pursue this whole other career.
Mhm.
So realizing, am I able to maybe potentially take some time off of work to get to a better place mentally? Or is it like if I don't work, I'm gonna lose the house, right? Like, so where are you? Like, where are you at? Like, what is reality? Because the reality is a lot of people don't have the luxury to like take some time off from work. Like they have to go back um to be able to like keep the lights on and food in the fridge and stuff. And that's real life. Um, and I understand, and that's a whole other thing to discuss, like the mental benefits of taking some time off, but some people don't have that luxury.
Mhm.
So just being really honest with your situation. And then I would say the second step, especially if you were a two-income household, which that is usually the case nowadays,
Mhm.
um, speak with someone about like budgeting because now you don't have that income coming in where before you had that. So how much, like, what are my bills? Like, what can I afford? How much can I spend each month? Do I have to make some changes to my lifestyle? Do I have to move? Like, that's reality.
Mhm.
Like for me, because I was very privileged in the fact that my husband had so much like set up for our family.
Mhm.
Um, not only did I not have to rush back to work, but I had like the bigger problem of deciding like what do I do with this money?
Mhm.
So for me, it was hiring like the right financial investors and like where do I put this money so my money makes money for me.
Mhm.
And for me, my goal was always, which if you are a widow, you understand if you get life insurance, it's like it's such a double-edged sword because it's such a blessing, but it brings up so much grief because you only have it because your husband died or your wife died.
Mhm.
And that reality really sucks. And it actually is really hard to spend that money
Mhm.
because of that reason, because there's such an emotional attachment to it. But for me, because I have two sons, the concept in my mind was I always want this money to grow because I want my kids to have all the opportunities that they want, whether that's like they want to go to nice colleges or universities, or if they want to buy a house, or if they want a nice wedding. Like, I want this money to grow because eventually I want this to be, for them. Um, so I work my butt off so I could make an income so I don't have to touch that money at all. Like that's all invested.
Yeah.
So being able to make those type of decisions, like what do I do with this money if that is something that happens, that's another thing to think about as well.
I want to pat your husband on the back because I can't tell you how many people that I see that don't have life insurance or don't want to have that conversation at all. And I'm thinking right now, so as a financial advisor, which is what I am, I will have people that reach out that are a widow, and I have not been trained in understanding how do I have that conversation. To the same degree, there's someone that we will often refer clients to, and her name is Sin Meyer, and she is a life coach from the purpose side. So this is someone who retires and now goes, I don't really know what to do. All my coworkers were my friends, and now I'm 60 and I don't know what I'm going to do from a purpose and fulfillment perspective. And she does kind of one-on-one life coaching on the purpose side. Now, I'm organizing the finances. I'm the one personally trying to ensure that we have the lifetime income, that if kids want to go to college, they can. But I find sometimes I'm doing kind of both a little bit because naturally it comes up. But let's assume someone were to reach out to me and go, Ari, I want one-on-one coaching because I'm a widow and I would just feel better talking to someone where that's the sole responsibility. We're not also bringing in, hey, it's yeah, how am I feeling about not having my spouse? And then all of a sudden, like, hey, did we file our taxes? Because that's just not very
Right.
optimal. So the work that you're doing with clients, are they normally saying, hey, Whitney, you're like, we're meeting once a week to discuss what's going on in life? Is it monthly? Is it a program? Like, how does that even work if I were to want to refer a client? Because I'm thinking of a few right now.
Yeah. So for me, I only take on clients that commit to 12 sessions with me. And that's probably obvious because it's really hard to show up for yourself when you're grieving.
Mhm,
But I find that if you are showing up sporadically, like once every couple months or once a month, you're not really digging into the processing that you need to in order to move forward. The
mhm,
people that reach out to me, they desperately want to be able to find a way to move forward in their lives. And it's not about leaving your love behind for the person that is no longer here, but it's moving with their memory and being able to find purpose and being able to find joy in the aftermath of immeasurable heartbreak, which
mhm,
is what I help people do is carry that with them, but also building a life again.
mhm. Are there, and this is the last question I have for you, and then if there's anything else, Whitney, you want to go over, please, by all means. Is there any story that comes to mind where you remember speaking to someone where it really was difficult? They reached out and you were like, hey, I don't know if they will feel differently. And then after multiple sessions and having conversations, it was, hey, my life really is different. Any story you can think of there?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I can think of a few clients, but one of the ones that has really touched me is actually a widower. And he had lost his wife about 3 or 4 years ago, and his coping mechanism was just sitting in his this one chair all day and sleeping. Like that was, and this was for years because he didn't get the help that he needed. Um, and now after working with each other, like he's decorating his house for different holidays and he's organizing his home again and he's putting away his wife's physical items and giving them to charity and all of these things that are so emotionally draining and he didn't have the mental or emotional capacity to be able to do these really hard things, but now he's able to push himself a little bit and he's finding hope again that my life is not just like in a chair all day. And it's like I know that seems really trivial for people that are able to function properly in the world, but for him just getting out of that chair was the biggest leap of faith for him.
Wow. Well, seriously, Whitney, kudos to you because yeah, I think I'll do important work for clients. We think we're investing our money in doing things that really do add peace of mind. And that's why I do what I do. For those who don't know, my parents were burned by multiple advisors. That's why I became an advisor because they didn't get the help they needed. But for
Yeah.
you to go and say, I am a widow, I was pregnant, my husband was in a vegetative state. Now here I am wanting to help others and thrive. And I imagine when you're having those conversations, you're still thinking at some point naturally about your husband because how could you not? You're a human, not a robot. But at the
Right.
same time, like you really are changing lives. And part of the mission that we'll talk about here is the point of all of this. The big phrase I'll talk about is called recreational employment. Is are you working because you want to or because you have to? And some people are truly working because they want to and they love it. You couldn't tell me not to reach out to you. For those who don't know, I was scrolling on Instagram. I saw Whitney an ad of you talking about being a grief coach. I went, I have clients,
Mhm.
they need to talk to Whitney. And that's as quick as this. I don't have it in me not to. And I want thousands and millions of people to watch this and go, wow, so I'm not alone. There are people that specialize in this. And I don't think they're just doing it because they have to. I think they want to do it. And that to me, I'm going to highlight just a few examples for people here. So I have different advisors that work here at Root. And these are advisors that are coming to me from big companies that many of you know. And, this can be Charles Schwab or Vanguard or Fidelity or what. And they're going, I want to do higher level planning. I want to be able to choose who I work with. And these are people watching the videos that you guys are watching, like this one, going, hey, this seems different, this company. And so, for example, Katie here, I just want to kind of highlight her because Katie, she likes working with people that are divorced or are a widow because financially understanding how to bridge that gap is difficult. And so Katie would probably go, hey, if you want one-on-one coaching with an expert, go talk to Whitney. But I will have Katie on my live shows. So for those of you who are unaware, every single week on Wednesday, I will have a live show and I will bring on different advisors. And so you can meet them. Cause I even brought my mom on here. My mom actually created what's called Manadoop, which is a self-esteem emotional learning program for kids because my mom didn't have self-esteem. And so this is the work that we're doing is, yes, it's rooted in the finances, which I'm glad you brought up, Whitney, because yeah, it's what's the reality? If we have to move, we have to move because our finances can't support it. But I want to make sure that if you are working with someone, which I'm the first person, by the way, to tell people, I don't know if you need an advisor. It depends on timing, it depends on the level of complexity. But I want to just highlight Jeff as well here. So, Jeff, he holds these degrees in behavioral finance. And that might sound a little weird, but the reason I want to highlight this is because it's really hard to spend money, especially I imagine, Whitney, if you're coming in through life insurance and you're thinking about, hey, I don't want to dwindle this too quick and then my kids can't do what they want to do. But this also might apply to a lot of you who are wondering, hey, I've saved and invested really well. I now have 2 million bucks. I want to retire. I know I'm on track. Why can't I spend? Well, that's once again because you're a human. And if you were not a good saver, you probably wouldn't have $2 million and be in the position you are. So it's almost like what's done well for you to get you to where you are. If you keep doing that, yeah, you might have plenty of money, but do you want to have 10 million bucks when you're 80? And is that the goal here? So this to me, when we're talking about financial planning, yes, we're doing the income and the taxes and the estate planning, and we're doing all that stuff, but we're not just doing it to do it. We're doing it so that you can go, wow, my life is way better. I'm not sitting in that chair. I'm going out and I'm doing more activities that I care about most. So, all of this to say, Whitney, it's a pleasure because most people are not willing to even have this conversation. I hit up a few different people going, hey, are you open to coming on the show? And it's, yeah, I'm busy and I've got stuff going on, which I get. Everyone's busy. I'm busy. We all are. But this is too important to not talk about. So I just want to say, honestly, thank you. And I have clients that I'm going to be probably sending to you. But I want to just ask in case there's anything else you go, hey, I'm just going to sleep better at night sharing X with my audience, or is it, hey, if people really do need one-on-one, that's why I'm here. Floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I guess I would end with just saying have the tough conversations with your spouse and other family members. Like get your wills in orders, get your estates in order. Know what your loved one would want in the event that they, are in a vegetative coma state where they can't talk to you and tell you because I was in a position where I had to make those decisions all on my own, and that was really hard. I am a proponent for things like life insurance and investing early and often. So, if something happens, you have a safety net, especially if you have a young family. So, all of those things, I know it's really hard to talk about because you don't want to talk about these horrible things happening, but I will say from experience, I'm so happy that we had certain things in place. And now, as a proponent, and in this position, I am always in a position to tell people where I wish I had done better and where I wish I would had tougher conversations. But if you're somebody that, is a widow or is grieving, I am taking on new clients at the moment. And you can find me pretty much everywhere online, at Whitney Lynn, Lyn Allen, on all socials. And my new book just came out, as well, What Must Be Carried. So yeah, that's me. So thank you for the
Amazing.
opportunity.
Of course, Whitney. And so, everyone, all the links to Whitney are going to be below in the description. If you're listening on the podcast app, it'll still, of course, be in the description as well. But you can learn more about Whitney, who she is, how she approaches this. Check out her new book, of course. And Whitney, just want to say thank you so much again.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful that you took the time.
Yeah. Thanks again.
Of course. Thanks, Whitney.